Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity Podcast, episode 187. It's quite shocking, really. We're moving towards episode 200 at quite a rate of knots. So, what's that? 13 weeks away. It's about 3 months to go, and we'll be on episode 200, which is amazing. So, today is an episode with just Pete and myself. Today, we've obviously had a big run
Hello.
of hello. We've just obviously had a big run of guests recently. Obviously, recently we've had the big two episodes with Paul McElroy. We've had Sean Conway. We've had Hannah Camden. We've had Rob Clarkson. We had Mac McLaren. We've had loads of guests on recently. So we thought we'd take this episode. I'll tell you at the end of this episode. We've already got a guest lined up for next week, so I'll kind of give you some information on that at the end of this one. But today is going to be Pete and myself talking about and around something that I think affects all of us and will be hopefully helpful. Hopefully, you'll be able to what would the word be? Empathize. Hopefully it will hit a nerve, and it's something that you can relate to, is what I was trying to say. Yeah, something you can relate to, what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into the kind of subject of today, I will catch up with Mr. Peter Lant. How are you doing, Pete?
I'm doing very well, considering, which is why we're talking about this today, isn't it?
So before we, yeah, so I mean, obviously we've got loads coming up. We've got loads going on at the moment, and loads coming up. And I will just say at the start, we are in the process of, and we've just been discussing this before coming online, we have got 4 reviews for the podcast. Five reviews.
We've got 4 that we can see, and there's another one. There's another one out there somewhere.
And we're just working out. We will hopefully by next week have managed to find some of these reviews that we can read, and we can give away some merch. But we've just been discussing it, and it's been a bit of a technical. I don't know why it's so complicated to actually read your own reviews that people have written for you. But we've got 4 or 5 reviews. And that's going to be our raison d'etre for the next week, to try and find them so we can at least read one next week and give away some merch. But I just wanted to update that just so that you know where we're at, and we're not ignoring it and sweeping it under the carpet. Just technically, we know they're there, but we can't see them. Which is a little bit frustrating, which again, I suppose, is going to tie into what we're talking about today, Pete. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, because that's one of those things. Again, it is one of those things you can't control, isn't it? And also, it seems like it's really hard to leave a review for a podcast anywhere other than Apple. You just or leave a comment on YouTube, and that's it. So
yeah, I think on Spotify, you can just give, I think we've got like 15 or 16, but it's literally just people can just give you a star rating out of like 5, but they can't actually write anything. So, so it's going to be like Apple reviews, isn't it? Because then we also said, I think Steph was looking into it, and Google Podcasts is going to cease being soon, isn't it? I think she said.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
Yeah. So, yeah, we are on it, guys. We are doing our best. Along with everything else that we're trying to juggle, which again is what we're going to talk about today. So yeah, Pete, I mean, do you want to kind of maybe tee up, I suppose, the kind of the concept or the thing we're going to discuss today between us?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I sent you that message yesterday saying, I think, if it's just the two of us, let's talk about this, because I put a post up. Because basically loads of stuff has been going wrong that I can't control. It's just been going, websites are down, and trying to do some accounts, and I couldn't log into a bank the day I'd put aside for it, because it was going to take us like an hour or two, and the bank website just wasn't there, so I couldn't do that. And then it's like, right, so that's another couple of hours in a couple of days' time that I'm going to have to do that whenever I can, when I've got the time, and blah blah blah, and all of this. And there's loads more. I mean, we've just been talking about T-shirts. I was wanting to put some T-shirts together for Wolf Bath. And the thing that we use has changed. It's now turned into an app, and it doesn't work properly, which James is like, you're fully aware of, aren't you, and all of that. So it's like everything I've tried to do for the last couple of weeks is like hasn't happened, or is pushed something back to say, now you're gonna have to do it all again. Like the amount of effort, time and effort putting these things out, and setting things up and running businesses and all of that it takes a lot. And then when everything changes, that's beyond your control, like third party stuff and what have you. It has the potential to throw everything out, doesn't it? Like we were talking about.
I think
So
sometimes you have this thing, don't you, where you think, oh, I'll just do this job. It's going to take, it should be like a 5 minute job, and you start it. And then because of, you can't find a password for something, or like you say, something's changed that's out of your control. And then it can very quickly consume like half a day trying to sort something out, can't it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing is, so neurologically, that's one of those things that if you've got a list of stuff to do, and like you might write stuff down that you're going to do, like the 3 things you're going to do tomorrow, and then you can sleep better because it's like, well, I'm not worried about what I'm going to have to do tomorrow. I've got these things to do, and that's it. Whereas if you don't write it down or you don't think about it, you're just like, I'll wake up tomorrow and do some stuff. You're probably not going to sleep as well because your brain's like, no, I want to know what I'm doing. It likes closed loops, right? So things like that, you're like, I'll do that tomorrow. And then if it doesn't get done and you're not going to be able to do it the next day, then it's like, right, now that's going to rumble on. And what am I going to do about it? And my boiler, like, this isn't a whinge. This is just a prime example because this goes right into Maslow's hierarchy of needs as well. So my boiler has been leaking for 2.5 months since the beginning of January. It's 13 degrees in my flat. It's freezing, right? The heating doesn't work. I've had 2 plumbers look at it. The first one didn't fix it properly. The second one knows what's wrong, but then he's been off for 2 weeks. He just decided to have 2 weeks off work. So I'm like, right, brilliant. It's 13 degrees in my house. Like, and now I need to find someone else or you're going to come. So currently my brain is like, that is an issue that needs fixing. And I don't know when that's going to happen. And it snowed last weekend as well. It's been freezing. It's been the coldest it's been like over the whole of winter. So that is, along with all the other stuff, which is all minor stuff. So this is the thing, right? Okay, got a roof over my head. I've got money. I've got this. I've got that. It's all fine. However, all of these things mount up, don't they? And then it can throw everything else off because all of that I can control none of it, and it can throw everything else off. And the Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing, you know that, don't you? Like, there's the base of the pyramid, which is your shelter, food, sleep, all of those things that are really essential to what
they're basically essential to stay alive. They're essential
to stay alive, and what makes you able to do all the other things that you can do, right?
Yeah.
So that goes in neurology. That'll go straight to my primitive brain, or straight to our primitive brain, and be like, right, your shelter is compromised, your heat is compromised, you're not sleeping as well enough, and all that, and then that becomes like an existential thing, doesn't it? So that's the reason why I wanted to speak about it today, because I think this can happen with a lot of people. So one of the guys who I used to train online, who's a listener of this podcast, actually, so he might be listening. We also, there's a mindset group that I do as well, and we were talking about stuff in that, and he nearly sacked everything off one week because he'd cracked his alloy wheel. He hit a curb and cracked his alloy wheel, right? And he was like, so I was just, he got really annoyed, and he was like, I wasn't going to train. I just thought, oh, sod it, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to throw training out the window, and then I'm just going to eat crap and all of that. And this is what people can do, right? When they get into that emotional state, they seek the ice cream or the pizza or whatever it is, and then just say, I'm not training because I can't be bothered. So the post I put up yesterday was about, well, I can't control any of that stuff. It's freezing in the flat. I can't control which websites are working and all that. However, I can pick up and lift them. I pay Paul McElroy to send me a program every week. He sends me it and I do it. I can eat well, which I have been doing. And there was something else as well. I'm like, oh no, I don't go out walking in nature. Because all of those things, if I throw all of those out as well, it's going to, it could put me out for months. Rather than just like when all of this stuff comes back online and everything's okay and it gets warmer outside and everything, then actually I'll look back on it and go, what an idiot. What a petty idiot for getting annoyed at these things that I can't control. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think that's so to kind of broaden the context of the conversation, is it's kind of you described them as sort of non-negotiables, and how you actually can set yourself up to stay on track, or to steady the ship, or to keep some form of consistency. And what's the saying? To keep your head when all about you are losing theirs. You know what I mean? To kind of
Yeah.
um, to know that these things are going to go on, but to somehow have these non-negotiables that you have in your life that do help keep you on track, and help you in moving in the right direction, and stop the wheels coming off totally. And I think that, because there's another saying, isn't there, that um, when you kind of what would the kind of the phrase be, this self-sabotage or whatever, when something goes wrong, like you said with your friend, that you just think, well, I'm not going to train, I'm going to go to the pub and I'm going to get pissed, or something like that. And you do that, and you have that instinct, because at that time you kind of want to, you don't want to deal with it. You want to kind of almost, it's a little bit of self-harm as well, I think, in there some way. You want to just get angry, but you want to just totally sabotage yourself to make yourself feel better. But someone described it to me before as, it's like if you get a flat tire, it's kind of like going around and slashing the other three tires as well. You know what I mean? When really you've just got one tire there that you need to sort out. But our whatever kind of primitive brain it is, and I do it. I had something similar earlier in the week, where I tell you what it was. It was that when Facebook went down, and I thought it was just something to do with my phone. And one of those, because I was trying to do something for work, and then it booted me out of it said, "Oh, your session's expired." It booted me out of Facebook, and it wouldn't let me get back in. And I wanted to do this thing for work, and I thought it was just me, my phone. My password was wrong. I was messaging Steph saying, "Have you updated the password? I can't get in." And because and it's a perfect example. And then I got angry. I got frustrated. Um, and then when you realize, oh, actually, it's not the whole app, it's just not working. Then you kind of think, okay, but the initial instinct is frustration and annoyance, and something like that. So it's yeah, it's how, but then you settle down soon after that. But it's kind of not not reacting, I suppose, to these little things. Like I say, it's not an important thing, but it's like one thing that it's like, the straw that broke the camel's back, isn't it? One thing happens after another, and finally something happens, and it just sends you over the edge. Like
Well,
Michael Douglas in Falling Down.
what a great film that is. Honestly, have you seen all the memes and stuff of people saying, like, the older I get, the more I understand Michael Douglas's character in Falling Down?
Yeah, yeah.
But no, that it is that thing, isn't it? Of when everything's going well and something goes wrong, it's like some minor thing goes wrong, it's fine, because your brain's all fine, you're all fine, everything's fine. When they start adding up, because this is another thing I said to the guy who I was talking about, the guy with the alloy wheel, that I think that happened, something happened at home as well. And he was talking to someone at work about it, and they said, "Oh, be careful, these things come in threes." And it's like, no, they
Oh
don't.
God, yeah, yeah.
No, they don't. That's just something people say. So
Yeah.
then what people do is wait around for the next thing to go wrong. And something will go wrong, and they'll go, "See, it's in threes." And it's like, no, that's because you wanted that to happen. Just forget about it. It doesn't matter. Things will go wrong. But when lots and lots of minor things go wrong, that's when it just chips away at your resolve each time, doesn't it? So then that one thing, when people say you're overreacting to that, and then you overreact to them saying that, because no, I'm bloody not.
Yeah.
You are, and it's because of all the other things. So that it all adds up, doesn't it? It compounds. That's the word. So yeah, the falling down thing is brilliant. But what was I going to say? I was going to say something, and then you mentioned falling down, and I've forgotten now. But
yeah. So what would be? So we described this, didn't we? But just before we came on, the kind of the non-negotiables, the kind of, I suppose, they're habits, practices, rituals, commitments, standards that you hold yourself to, that anchor you in a good place, that kind of steady you and anchor you when things start going wrong, so that you don't totally lose it, and you don't throw your toys out, and you can kind of stay on track. So what kind of things would you think about in terms of practical routines, habits, rituals, standards, habits that you try and have that do anchor you and keep you on track?
For me, it's well, strength training or moving, strength training, walking, whatever it is. I walk every day. I strength train 3 times a week, and that's it. That's kind of like the physical stuff. I eat well 80% of the time, and do some like mindset work, like some sort of journaling, or I've got like lots of old like different religious texts and stuff like that. I'm not religious, but the philosophies behind them, I've got like the Tao Te Ching and the Bhagavad Gita and a few other, I kind of like, I've got a few others anyway, but like lots of stuff like that. And just making sure I keep my mind on track, because obviously, you do get angry at stuff and everything, but imagine I used to blow up. So now it's less exacerbated. Is that, can you say less exacerbated? Anyway, it's not as bad as it was, but it still makes me feel guilty when it happens, because I'm like, that's just a minor thing. But then I'm more aware of the fact that I know it's a minor thing, and I know my reaction to it is too much, exacerbated. But imagine what it would have been if I wasn't working on my mindset. So those are the daily things that I do, and that's it. Because I was talking about this about tracking stuff, right? Because you can track those things, right? You can track what you eat, you can track how many steps you do, you can track how many strength training sessions you do a week, and even going into that, you can track the numbers on weights and stuff like that to see the progression and what have you. But I was talking about people who like track the other other things like sleep. Say you track sleep, and it's like, well, that's great, but what happens if you're not getting good sleep? What do you do? And it's not as simple as just going out and doing more steps, is it?
Yeah.
If you're not doing enough steps, you go and do more steps. If you're not getting enough sleep, you manage stress levels, and it might be less screen time, an evening ritual or whatever. But those are a bit harder to nail down, aren't they?
Because sleep is the result of lots of other things, isn't
exactly.
it? That's kind of the end product of doing lots of things. Whereas going out and walking and doing more steps is the thing. You know what I mean? I suppose it's like if you don't have, say, enough money in your bank account, but that's the result of all the other things that you do, isn't it? And your spending habits, your saving habits, and the way you do everything. The what was in your bank account is the result. In the same way, if you're sleeping well or not, that's the result of the way you're running your whole life as well. So yeah, it's very difficult, and it's very difficult to change. You can't really change the result without changing all the processes that lead to the result, can you?
Yeah, which is where I think people get frustrated and confused with those sorts of things. Because one of my guys used to he was tracking his sleep, and it was telling me he wasn't getting enough quality sleep, and he started getting worried about it. So he just stopped tracking it.
And you get stressed, and you get worse.
And he started sleeping better. So it's like, right, okay. But I know what I was going to say earlier. It's in the it's the gap. So Viktor Frankl talks about this in Man's Search for Meaning, doesn't he? In the gap between stimulus and response. And if you can widen that gap, so obviously, like I was saying, if everything's going well and something goes wrong, some minor thing goes wrong, that gap is quite wide. But the more and more things go wrong, the gap starts to narrow, doesn't it? So you end up like something happens, you react. Something happens, you react. And that's different. That's a different amount of time for different people, isn't it? But you can work on expanding that gap because the gap is a neural pathway. So you have these like neural tags in your brain, and if something happens, a stimulus happens, you respond like instantly, because your brain works in patterns, doesn't it? Imagine it, if we had to learn every day when you go to bed, you wake up the next day and you had to relearn everything that you already learned, plus all the other stuff as well. It would be a nightmare, wouldn't it? So your brain remembers patterns and things, so it can then work on autopilot. So you get that stimulus, you get that response because your brain goes that way. So it's been described to me, and I've described it before as well, as like the path in the grass. So you walk a path in the grass, and then it just become, you can see it. And if everyone walks that, there's a field by me, and people walk the dogs around there, and there's a big path all the way around it because everyone does that loop. So it's there, and it's always there. And people, you even walk into the field, and you'll naturally follow the path.
Mm.
Whereas if you walk straight across the middle, that will not form a new path. You do that once and then go home again and then come back and do the path again. That doesn't even make a path. It doesn't appear. If you did that and then other people started following and then everyone did it, the other path would disappear and that would be your new path. So you can do that with your stimulus and response. When you have the stimulus, instead of responding straight away, you can be aware of it and then say, right, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get angry at that. I'm not going to get upset, whatever it is. And then if you can recognize that, and every time like just identify that one thing or something that happens a lot, and you realize that it's, getting angry at stuff. That was my thing. It still is my thing. And if you can recognize that, you can say, right, I'm not going to get angry at that. I'm going to do this thing instead. And then eventually that becomes the new thing. But you got to do it. It's like training, isn't it? You got to do it over and over and over and over again. It doesn't just happen by doing something once or twice. And then you go, right, that's that reset. So that's the whole thing he talks about. Not the whole thing, he talks about a lot, obviously, but that's the thing that sticks out for me sometimes from that book is owning that gap. Changing your reaction to things and just becoming a more, I don't know, relaxed individual.
Yeah, I think the thing, so the other day, when thinking about it now, the day, whatever day it was when the Facebook thing happened, I'd probably had 4 or 5 days in a row where I'd worked really long, started at 6 a.m. and been on it and been working till like 9 at night and was probably a little bit overworked and overstressed and underslept. And so then, like you say, then it doesn't take a lot to kind of, and my initial thing, which I'm not proud of saying, was I was walking home and I felt, I think it might have been Tuesday, and I felt, and I really felt and I don't drink very much at all anymore. I don't know, like it probably averages like 2 or 3 pints a month. You know what I mean? It's nothing. And I was walking over thinking, I really feel like having a drink. I'm gonna go and stop and get like just a 4-pack of beers or something, and I want to have, I was like frustrated and felt like that, and I didn't. But I think it's that kind of thought of, like you say, it's that delay of someone might come back from a busy day at work and they think, oh, I'm not going to train tonight. I'm going to get a takeaway, and it's that kind of thought of and it's almost like that. I was listening to a podcast the other day where it's almost like that entitled, oh, I deserve a takeaway tonight. I've worked really hard. I'm stressed. I deserve a takeaway. I'm not going to cook, and it's that thought. And then it's just breaking that. But then the thing that stopped me having a drink was because I thought, well, I've got to wake up tomorrow and go to work early. And I don't drink. And if I suddenly drank like 3 or 4 beers, I'd probably have a right hangover tomorrow. I'd feel rubbish all day. I wouldn't be able to train. So I suppose what actually stopped me doing it was knowing that my character is not someone who deals with their problems through drinking alcohol. Do you know what I mean? So I can see if you are somebody who deals with their stresses from drinking alcohol, that's just how you deal with it. And I suppose that's or getting a takeaway, or treating yourself with sweet, hyper palatable, cookies, donuts, whatever it is, whatever your kind of vices that you would go to kind of take the stress away. That's a big pattern. It's a pattern interrupt, isn't it? But that's a big pattern to interrupt, because when I got really stressed, I thought I'm going to have a drink. And then I thought of all the reasons why I shouldn't and why didn't want to. And then I didn't. But if that's your go-to pattern of behavior, that must be really tough to crack, you know.
Yeah, massive. I mean, my old man's a classic example of that. Or he was.
Mm.
He gave up smoking. When was he? Like 48 or something. About 48, 50, 48, something like that. Anyway. And he put on a load of weight because he wasn't smoking. And that happens, right? Because he ate loads and what have you. So every Monday he'd start a new diet. I'm starting Monday. So he'd have he had fry-ups in the evening before he went to bed for some reason. It was really weird. Anyway, he had a massive fry-up and a load of beers on a Sunday night because he's like, I'm starting Monday, so I'm going to have a blowout.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever that, like,
Well,
okay.
that's common, isn't it? That is the old.
Yeah.
I remember, like, do you remember Garfield the cat?
Yeah.
There always you always see things like the diet starts on Monday, and he'd have like a
Yeah.
massive lasagna and and
Yeah.
whatever and cakes and just eat. It's almost like the diet starts tomorrow. I'm going to eat everything, or I'm giving up drinking tomorrow, so I'm going to drink everything in the house tonight, so
Mm.
it's not there tomorrow. And then you
But
kind of
so anyway, he used to do that, right? Every Sunday.
yeah.
And then Monday would come around, he'd get up and go to work. He worked shifts as well. So some days he'd be working like 7 till 3, and then 3 till 11 the following week or whatever. So he'd get up and go to work, and then he'd come back on Monday at 3 o'clock, stressed. Right, he worked in a factory. Right, he worked in Roundtrees, which then became Nestle, just up the road from us in Newcastle. Literally just around. He didn't have to commute. He went to work on his bike. It took him about 10 minutes. Right, 10 minutes to get home, and he's basically on a factory line, just putting sweets in bags or whatever they do, right? He'd come home stressed from that, right? Like really stressed. Oh, that's it. It's over. He'd go to the bar shop, which he called it, on the way home and get 4 cans of Stones, a couple of bottles of brown ale, drink those and eat crap. And then he'd be like, right, well,
and then bow to start again next Monday.
Well, that was the thing. So that's Monday. And he's like, oh, I've failed this week. So I'll start again next week. So then come Sunday night, he's having a massive fry up. So it's a way of keeping yourself in that place, right? And he basically did that, till the day he died. Well, not till the day he died because he got cancer, so he couldn't do that towards the end. But
he did that
he basically lived his life like that for like 15 years.
Yeah.
Of just that loop of not being able to handle it, basically. And so that I'm mindful of that as well when I think of these things, because I'm like, I don't want to become that. And I had the danger of becoming that. And I've had a thought running around in my head today, but I don't know how to articulate it. But it goes with the thing of like, if you don't spend time on yourself now, or if you don't spend time on your health now, you'll be forced to spend time on it or money on it or whatever later on.
Yeah.
Well, I've kind of spun that because I was thinking about, why was I thinking about this? I don't know. Just like I used to have like lots of expensive suits and shirts and all of this sort of stuff, right? When I was earning loads of money in the job that I did. And that was kind of like, it's your plumage. And I was thinking about like, in nature, you get birds with a plumage and all that. And they're in there shoving their asses in their faces and giving it all this and like, look at my wings and look at this and look at that and different colors and everything, right? And we do that, right? That's fair enough with clothing and what have you. But or with clothing and being an outgoing person and life and soul of the party and that, right? When you're out and about, but maybe it's not like that at home, say. But so I'm coming with a thing. It's like spend time and money on it's like on your mental and physical well-being now. So put effort. So time being effort, and then money is just money, isn't it? But then you need effort to create money anyway. But spend time and money on your mental and physical well-being now. Otherwise, you'll be forced to spend a bunch of time and money on the facade you're trying to create to cover it all up. So covering your body up because you don't want anyone to see it because you're not happy with it, and covering your mindset up by just being the life and soul and being someone else in front of everyone else. And that's not for that's for me. That's not for anyone else, and it's not saying this is what you should do, but that thought was running around my head when I was out walking the dog today, because it's like that's who I used to be. Whereas now it's a bit more kind of this is me. Because I was thinking as I was walking around town, I've got like muddy boots on. I'm permanently muddy because of the dog. And where I go and take him, because I go walking where he wants to, like he'll enjoy it, So I must walk through town looking like one of the homeless people. I think I'm surprised no one's like chucked money in my cap or anything like that. No, but you know what I mean. And then I was like, actually, years ago I would have cared about that, but now it's like that's not my problem. So yeah, that was just.
No, I think that's like I've seen a few things recently where people have sort of said, when you're over 40, actually having, being fit and healthy and looking after yourself is a bigger status symbol than, driving a nice car or having the flashiest clothes or whatever, and it kind of ties into what you've said there, because it's rare to see. It's rare that this podcast that we're doing now, speaking to however many hundreds of people, possibly thousands, over a month, obviously thousands, but per episode, hundreds of people at least. Listen, it's the minority of people who are seriously interested in looking after themselves and taking personal responsibility for things, and it's rare, you used to see someone in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, who's fit, healthy, active, confident in a real confident way, not as in, like you say, a showy, materialistic confident way, but actually someone who's confident in their own abilities, and they've got independence, they've got strength, they feel good, they look good, all that kind of stuff is really, really rare, So it's that for me again is important. That's far more important than driving the latest car or having a house with another 2 bedrooms on it or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not important to me in the slightest. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I was thinking, because when you said about the non-negotiable things, I was just trying to think about simple things, and I think we can say, I think, like you said, like with your dad, with the diet starts on Monday and everything's going to change on Monday. I think when something actually becomes like a non-negotiable, you have to have been doing it for long enough that it really is. It's not just something you say; it's something you do. Do you know what I mean? And which is what way you live. So for me, one of the main things I think is going to bed early. Do you know what I mean? Is what which again ties in with sleep. It's not guaranteeing I'm going to have a great night's sleep, but it's kind of giving me a good head start, getting to bed early at a decent time every night and not sitting up watching TV or playing computer games or whatever, or sitting on my phone or whatever. So most nights I will be in bed before 10 p.m., and a lot of the time it will be maybe before 9:30. I think that's a really important one. Like you said, strength training, reading, I do every day. I mentioned before, I've started reading Tim Anderson's new book, A Simple Book of Strength, which is really nice. It's really making me think about things in a really nice way. Doing this podcast is a non-negotiable for me every week. Nothing gets in the way of that unless, a few weeks a year, maybe when one of us is on holiday. And the other thing that I think is really important is I have my Tuesday off work, which is a day where I don't work and I don't go to the gym and I don't train, and it is just a total day off. And I think that is really important for me personally as well, because when I go to train in my gym, which is the place that I work, where inevitably people who listen to this who may run their own gym, you go to your gym to train, and you tidy something up or you get asked a question or you know what I mean, you kind of, it's not like
you've got those bloody annoying customers asking you things. God's sake, who needs them, man?
yeah but you know what I mean, so that's a big thing, having it 1 day a week where I just spend it with Steph. No no work, no training. I think that's really important as well. So things like that. But I do think that those things kind of anchor you in the reality, and we've spoke about it many times before, and with the Maslow's hierarchy as well. But um, it's becoming, it's developing your character, which I think is the most important thing. And it's not tips and tricks and quick fixes and quick wins. It's developing the character of being like you are, someone who trains not every day, but you train when you say you're going to train. You walk the dog every day. You do this podcast. You read books. You live the life. You're involved in mindset groups. You are that character. You're not playing a part. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not you're not acting. You're not playing a part. It is who you are. And I think that we've spoke before that that's the only time really when you change and you create change. It's when you become, when you change your character. I think that's the most. That's what stopped me going and getting drunk the other day when I got fed up, because that's not what I do. It's what I wanted to do at the time, but it's not what I do. It would have been maybe 20 years ago, but it's not what I do now. So it's not who I am. It's not who I am, I suppose. That's the big one, So
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, like, it's funny though, because the thing with that, it's still. One second. Excuse me. I've had a cold, so I'm coughing up a lung. That's another thing I've had as well. But no, that's one of those things. It would be quite easy to have done that. But you've also got the thought of I've got to be in the gym tomorrow, and that's my business. Not like I've got to go and work for someone else tomorrow. So you might that's an easier thing to then do, isn't it? Because you're like, well, I don't have to be fully on the game tomorrow. And it's like, yeah, but you do, because, well, you don't, but that's not who you are, because you want to show up as the best version of you as a business owner, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'd say anyway. I'm speaking for you here, but that's what I see.
Mm.
Because if you show up any less than that, unless it's because you're ill or whatever and all of that, but if you show up any less than that from something which is self-soothing, say, the night before, then it only takes a few of those times and for like others to see that, this is there's a change in culture around here, or there's a change in something.
Yeah. And I think
because it doesn't go unnoticed, does it?
No, and I think that what you just said there is it goes back to that creating a gap or a separation between stimulus and response, which we all, and these are things that we all know. What's the word? Intellectually, you can reason with it intellectually that it's always try and think about how you'll feel after the thing. So if you don't want to work out, you don't want to train, focus on how you're going to feel after you've trained, because that if you train afterwards, you're going to feel much better. And it's what people say, drinking, if you drink too much, you're going to feel rubbish the next day. But people kind of just go for that short term, like you said, soothing, the alleviation of pain or whatever. But all it really does is create more discomfort the next morning. Or if you're going to have like a binge on junk food, it kind of in the moment, it makes you feel a little bit better, gives you a little bit of comfort, and gives you this kind of all this sort of, dopamine and feeling great and eating all the sugar and all the rubbish. But that when you finish, you're going to feel fat and bloated and uncomfortable and a bit sick maybe, and not great about yourself probably after you've done it. But it's trying to give enough of a pause between the stimulus and the response to kind of think it through before just reacting, because that is that. And I use the takeaway one because that's one that you probably hear a lot, and I know a lot. It's that kind of, you get in from a long day of work, can't be bothered to cook, been working really hard, let's have a takeaway, And if you do that enough, and it only needs to be like once or twice a week.
Yeah.
Some people do it like 2 or 3 or 4 times a week. you're just not going to get anywhere, and you're going to continue just be caught in this trap of this endless cycle of, you know, eating rubbish and not feeling good, you know.
Exactly. That it's the endless cycle thing, because this is where, I mean, we have a takeaway once a week,
Mm,
at the weekend, but it's not because we can't be bothered to cook, right? It's because we just do it because it's like, well, it's nice, you know. And
mm.
we'll pick like because all the restaurants do. It's not like takeaway anymore, is it? It's all the restaurants do it and
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah. It's
that.
like eating like it's like
Um,
eating a restaurant meal at home kind of thing. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say something. I've done it again. I was gonna say something. I've forgotten. Oh no, but it's like the awareness of it. I've got a few things actually that have come out of what you just
Mm,
said.
mm,
The awareness thing of like you say, using drink or takeaway, whatever it is, as an example. But using use drinking as an example because it's an easy one to do.
mm,
Is the awareness of, this is what it's going to do to me. This is how I'm going to feel tomorrow. Not just because you might have had a drink and felt ill or felt hungover.
mm,
There's the psychological side of it. I've just done something that's totally out of character. What's happening to me? And
mm,
that'll go around in your brain, right? And I said this in one of the groups that I'm in, because we were talking about stuff like this. And when you're not feeling it, you're at your best, mentally or physically, say, but I'm talking more mentally here. If you're not feeling at your best and you know you're on edge, you're going to snap at something at some point. What I've done before, and what I tend to do now, and I would usually bottle it up years ago and just not say anything and just sit there stewing. And you know when you can
mm,
feel it, you can walk into a room and feel like you'd be like, someone's not happy in here. There's something going on, because everyone will be like on edge.
mm,
I could have that effect, right? And so now what I do is, I'll say to Sean, I'll tell her, I'll be like, I'm not feeling like completely in control of my own head at the moment for some reason. You know, I'm being a bit reactionary. But I mentioned this in the group, and the guy who facilitates it said, like, and what does that do? Like, and it's funny because even just saying it out loud to Sean then makes me think, yeah, I'm kind of telling you I'm going to be a bit of a dick, so I'm just not going to do that. And then
mm,
it changes your perception anyway. So what you're
mm,
doing is actually talking it out loud and talking through it in your own head, saying, yeah, I'm going to be a bit of an idiot. And then it's like, well, actually, no, I don't have to be. And then you kind of resolve it, and then it tends to sort itself out then. And not
mm.
itself, because it's you being proactive about it. So with the drinking side of it, that could be easy. You know, you could just walk in with 4 cans and go right to Steph. Right, Steph, kids, Daddy's going to be rubbish tomorrow. Anyway, cheers, and open up the thing. You know, that's not going to happen, is it? If
Mm.
you said that, you'd be like, oh, that's another level of stupidity or whatever you want to
Yeah, and
call it.
that's yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and it's thinking through all of that, isn't it? And exactly, and it was just, but it's probably the whole thing goes on in your head, doesn't it? It's not. I know you, and the example you just gave, you actually verbalized it and maybe mentioned it to Sham, but for me, that whole scenario of I'm feeling rubbish, I'm going to go get some beers, I'm going to drink the beers, this is what's going to happen, blah 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 blah. It all just goes on in the head. It's that internal dialogue, and you're working out, you know, your brain's deciding, well, this could happen, this could happen, it's probably going to lead to this, it's probably going to lead to this, I'm probably going to feel like this. And it all happens probably at the speed of, you don't know how fast it happens, but probably at the speed of light almost, or far, you know, how, or faster, however it is, you know, and you kind of can work all of that out in your head. But I think that I just thought from something you just said is that once you allow yourself to succumb to something once, or to do something once, it's then easier to do it the second time, or then the third time, and then the fourth time, you know. um so, but that can be a good, something that's positive and something that's negative, you know. So if you took someone who maybe, I don't know why I'm going to this example, but someone maybe who's married, who has like an affair, say, it's probably easier to have the second affair than it was the first, and then the third, and then the fourth. Or, you know, like you say, if you're going to do something negative for your health, if you start getting into a pattern and a chain of doing it more and more regularly, just like building any habit, it's easier for you to do it. But in the same way as exercising or training or making good decisions, they talk about, building up the kind of, resilience muscles or whatever. You go to the gym once, it's easier to go the next time, then it's easier to go the third time, then it's easier to go the fourth time. So it's just kind of all of this stuff that we've spoke about for the last, 45 minutes. It's trying to know yourself and be aware of yourself. And like you said near the start, separate that stimulus and response and try and make more measured decisions and try to is it self-control? Is it, I don't know if it's self-control or becoming the person you want to become. Awareness, I think, is the biggest thing, isn't it? It's actually stopping and being aware of what's going on rather than, like you say, there's a stimulus, I'm going to respond. It's giving yourself that time to make a more educated, a more sensible decision. Where everyone's in such a rush these days, it's not a common thing. Everyone's in such a rush all the time. So to stop and actually have time to think is really what we all need, isn't it? We need to slow down, don't we, Pete? We all need to slow down a bit. Yeah.
There's a stat from somewhere that's in my head that it's something like 80% of our thoughts are negative and 95% of our days just spent on like subconsciously just going through the motions, right? You get up, you have a shower, you go to work, you drive to work, you get there, you don't even know, you just know the route. And so what you were saying there, getting into a habit, sitting down, doing nothing, not going to the gym, not eating well, all of that is get a takeaway because you don't have to cook it is the easy thing to do, right? So it's just like that. So if you do that, your body atrophies, your muscles atrophy, and your brain will in some way, right? If it's not being used, if it's just going through the motions day after day after day, it's just those same old processes all the time. So there's a thing called in your brain called your mid-cingulate cortex, and that can grow like a muscle. And that is the thing that grows when you do things. And it's not doing bungee jumps or like parachute jumps or, walking across the South Pole single-handedly and all that. It's just doing things that are slightly hard and a bit harder and a bit harder. So like going out and going for a walk or going for a run or whatever, or using the thing of like, oh, I'm going to get a takeaway tonight. Do you know what? I'm going to make a decision, not a better decision. I'm going to make a decision to just cook something in the oven for half an hour. I haven't got time, but if I've got something ready that I can just whack in the oven for half an hour while I do this other stuff, and then I can eat it, that'll take as long as if I had got it delivered or went out to get it or whatever. And these little decisions make your mid-cingulate cortex grow. And then doing harder things becomes easier, if that makes sense. So that it's like building resilience, and then you can do something slightly harder and something slightly harder. And that, like I say, that doesn't have to be taken to any extreme. It's just like everything. You can do it. Even how Paul talks about strength training, say you could do that still within relative comfort, but you're just expanding your comfort zone of things you can tolerate. And that's what I talk about with walk back. Just come out. And because a little bit, who did we speak to about this? Oh, it was Dave Whitley, wasn't it? No, it was Sean Cairns, about people's lives becoming smaller and smaller as they get older and older.
Yeah.
And the world becomes smaller. And he wants to help people stop that. And that's kind of that's what I want to do as well, So there'll be people around about who don't know the local area and don't know the local community because they drive anywhere and they never speak to anyone. And it's like, well, if you come out and go for a walk, just for example, with a bunch of people who you don't know, you're getting to know people in your local area and you're getting to know your local area. And then all of a sudden that can then expand to the next town. or I can expand to the Brecon Beacons or whatever, or the Malverns or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're walking all these hills and you're like, wow, this is a whole new adventure that I didn't even know was there because I wouldn't bother. But it all starts with stepping outside your front door, right? So that's the mid-singular cortex. Just like if you do that one day, it's like the walking thing, like we've said as well, isn't it? You walk one day, you're likely to be able to walk the next day and the next day and the next day if you do it all the time. If you stop doing it, then things change. So that's where my brain goes with that sort of stuff.
If you don't do something for 6 months and decide you're going to do it, you might be able to do it, you might not. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you haven't tested it at all in that amount of time. Yeah. No,
I go through the process of this. I go through is, and I do this with like my guys in the mindset stuff as well. Is there's a process of 4 A's. So there's awareness, acceptance, accountability, adaptability. So awareness is becoming aware of the thing. So like if you are falling into habits and just going through like, just reacting to stuff all day long, then it's like, well, if you can become aware of that, then at least that's like, right, that's something I want to change. And then the acceptance is accepting that everything. Oh no, acceptance comes first. Sorry, acceptance then awareness. So acceptance is accepting that everything is an influence. Everything that is happening to you and your reaction to everything is based on an influence that you've been taught by your family, by society, by lots of things around you, about who you spend most of your time with, and all of that sort of stuff. So those influences, like my dad would get angry at stuff, right? So therefore, then I started that happened with me because that's who I learned off. So as soon as you can accept all of those, that those are all influences and they can be changed, then that's the first step. And then become aware of what it is that you want to change, right? I always get them two mixed up because I think they're interchangeable, to be fair.
Yeah, awareness seems like it would be first. Yeah, logically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but then you've got accountability, which is just doing the thing that you need to do to change that thing that you've become aware of and you've accepted. And that can be within a group, it can be paying a coach, it can be like, like I said, spend time and money on your body and mind, on your physical and mental well-being. So, you might get a coach for that or whatever. And then that saves you money in the time and money in the long run of putting the facade on. So that's the accountability stage of just doing the thing day after day or week after week or whatever the frequency is. And then adaptation is when it's assimilated. It's your character. It becomes the thing that you are, the thing that you do. And then once that's in there, for me, eating well, everything that I mentioned, actually, going for a walk every day, eating well, strength training, are things that 15 years ago I didn't do any of. None of it. And it was really hard. And I hated it all. And I was like, who does that? It's only your what would you call them? Your boring people, the self-righteous people who do that. That used to be me. And then now I'm like, I've probably gone too far in the other direction, to be honest. But that's just fair. Yeah, but it's not judging other people who don't do that and being like, yeah, you're wrong and I'm right, sort of thing. But it's like, I know which feels better for me. But that is going through that whole process. And the problem is, you get your acceptance awareness stage, and then the accountability stage lasts a very, very, very long time. And that's where most people fall off, right? Because it'll get to summer or whatever, and they're like, well, I joined a gym and I did a few bits and pieces, but it's nice outside now, so I'm going to go and sit in a beer garden instead. And
then what's the final A?
It was adaptation.
Okay. So then that's when you have created that long-term adaptation, your character, all the rest of it. You become different.
The thing that you're doing, that was the change, just becomes passive.
Yeah.
So I get up on a Monday morning and I know I'm going to strength train. I know I'm going to strength train on a Wednesday and on a Friday. And then weeks that it doesn't happen, which is only when I'm on holiday or something, I know it's going to be different days and I'll have to move it around a bit or whatever, but that's fine. I know that on a Saturday we'll have a takeaway. We'll have some beers. I know that there's that time, which is going to be my 20% of the week that I'm not eating well and doing all the stuff, but I know that the other 80% I will, because it's just part of it, part of who I've become.
Mm.
You know, that's all the adaptation. That's all assimilated. That just becomes the thing. I know I'm going to go for a walk every day.
Mm.
Getting a dog really, really makes you have to assimilate that.
That's kind of your accountability, isn't it? The dog.
Well, accountability. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, oh, that's really interesting. I mean, it's been great to talk that through because I thought on the surface of it, when you sort of said, "Oh, let's talk about non-negotiables," you just kind of think, "Well, okay, well, that's just eating well, exercising, sleeping, drinking water, going to bed at a certain time, and it's kind of, but there's so much more to it um, as to how you A, come up with what is non-negotiable to you, and then B, how you assimilate it into your life and how it's going to be different for everyone, depending upon, your character and what it is you want to achieve and how you want to live and what standard you want to hold yourself to and all the rest of it. So, yeah, like all
That
these things, it's simple on the surface, but it goes a lot deeper.
that's a huge deal. One of the groups I'm part of is we've made lists of stuff that we're going to do that's hard. One of mine's speaking to my mum 3 days a week,
Hmm.
which I'm going to find hard. Right, that's me leaning into hard because we don't necessarily have a fantastic relationship, but for lots of various reasons. But she's 80 years old this year. I'm like, oh no, I need to speak to her more, right?
Hmm.
And I'm going to find that I'm going to speak to her after this actually, but I'm going to find that hard, right? But I'm going to do it. Um, so we all made lists of what we're going to do, what the hard stuff is. And some of the guys are like, yeah, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to make sure I eat well. I'm going to drink, I don't know, some of them American 2 gallons of water or whatever it is. They're talking, they don't do metric, do they? But anyway, but like I'm going to drink this much water. I haven't got those things in there because I do those anyway. I'm like, oh, I could write them on my list and go, yeah, I'm doing all that. It's like nothing changes then because I'm doing that anyway. So mine are different. Like it's the list of stuff that makes us lean into the hard stuff
Hmm.
to build that mid-singular cortex to help it grow.
Hmm.
So that's that, like you say, that's the thing. It's like you can listen to things like this, or you can listen to whoever, or there's programs out there who just say, just do this every day and you will become this. And it's like, yeah, but it's not the same for Doris down the road. It's not the same for, a mum of three, a single mum of three, or anyone I haven't got any kids. So like some things are easier for me than others. So other people have got great relationships with their parents. So that wouldn't be maybe on there. They're like, oh, now I have Sunday lunch every Sunday and blah, blah, and this and that and what have you. So it's different for everybody. So that's the thing. So it's just finding your own. But then once you get into the practice of doing it, that list should change over time. Not necessarily, not again, it'll change at different times for different people. It shouldn't be monthly, it shouldn't be quarterly, half yearly, whatever. It's just whenever the thing that was hard is now just something that you do, you can knock it off the list and replace it with something else. And then
Yeah.
just keep doing that. And like, I think I've got 5 things on my list, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know,
Better to have 5 things that you do than 15 things that you don't because
yeah,
you're overwhelmed because you've got 15 things to do. So,
exactly,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Excellent. Oh, that's great. No, that's really interesting, and that's made me think and kind of reinforce some things that I'm trying to work on, and maybe think about things. And it's almost like just talking through, thoughts and feelings and experiences as we have done today, kind of helps give more clarity and get more understanding. So hopefully that's been useful, interesting for some of you listening as well, and it hasn't just been a Pete and James therapy session.
Well, man, that's basically, that's why I love doing this, because like you just end up having a chat to people about
yeah,
stuff, and then you go, right, thank you.
yeah, but no, hopefully that's interesting for some of you guys as well. So yeah, if you are listening today, which you are always listening today, but if you're listening today on the day of release, it is Good Friday. So it's a bank holiday weekend in the UK. And that means that it's actually 2 weeks exactly till we welcome Dan John and Tim Anderson over to Unique Results in Chelmsford for a great weekend. Pete and I will both be there. I think at the time of recording, which is 3 weeks ago, There's one place left on that weekend. So if it's still there, if you are interested in coming along, go to Health Oddity Instagram, click on the link tree, and you'll see in there the event, which is Dan and Tim weekend. So that's in a fortnight's time. That is in April on Saturday the 13th, Sunday the 14th of April. Like I say, Pete and I will be there. Also, Dan John, who currently holds the record for most appearances on Health Oddity, which I think is 10 at the last time of counting. I think he's been on 10
so,
times. Yeah. Tim Anderson's been on a couple of times. We will be getting Tim on again, actually, to speak about his new book that I've mentioned today that I'm reading, which is really, really good as well. Really interesting. It's called A Simple Book of Strength. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. So we'll be getting Tim on again soon. But as I said near the start, I will keep to my promise. Next week, we are going to be joined by Ollie Loom, who is the documentary filmmaker we had on before, who did the Summit Mentality about the 24-hour Snowden relay. He's got a new documentary coming out called False Nine, which is all about women's football at grassroots level. I'm going to go and watch it. Again, this is the timeline stuff. By the time you listen to this, I will have seen it. By the time I will have seen it. But I'm going to go and watch it in 2 weeks' time or a week's time. And then we're going to have next week, we're going to have Ollie on, and I think the producer and the kind of person who's in the documentary, a lady called Emma. So Ollie and Emma will be on with us next week, talking about the new documentary called False Nine, about grassroots women's football, which will be interesting because we've never spoke about that before well, that'll be episode 188. We won't have spoke about that in 188 episodes. So that will be really good. So we'll be back next week with them. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review, and we will see if we can work out how to read them. And next week we will try and give away some merch if we manage to access these 5 reviews, which are sitting somewhere in cyberspace. We will find them and we'll read one, at least one out next week, if we can find them. Anyway, Pete, thanks very much, mate, for that today.
That's all right. Thank you.
Cool.
Very therapeutic.
And we'll see you all next week for episode 188 with Ollie, Loom, and Emma talking about grassroots women's football. Until then, bye-bye.